Speaking of weird, let's just get right into it. How many times, and I'm just looking for a number here. How many times have you masturbated in a hospital?
Only once.
Only
And that's
once?
all I
All right.
needed.
All right. So we'll get back to that later. But in doing my research, that I actually realized I don't know a lot about you. I was like trying to scroll through your Instagram to figure out maybe some things that I didn't know about you, but it's all just looks like steaks, CrossFit, weights, Rosie, and now the introduction of Ari, your daughter. But so where'd you go
Well,
to high
isn't
school?
Instagram the Instagram is the window to the person's I mean theoretical soul, like what they want everybody to perceive them as opposed to like the reality. But I mean, then you get like those insta famous people that think they're actually broadcasting like this is really me. I'm crying into a camera. Bullshit.
Right. Yeah,
Uh, so
it's what
yeah,
you choose to put up
it's
for
it's
sure.
uh, it's definitely what you choose to put up. I think I was actually thinking about this the other day of like um, how people push themselves on Instagram and there's got to be like this psychosis of how you present yourself. If you're always presenting yourself in a good light or in a bad light, like me, it's like yeah, I'm gonna present myself kind of a good light because honestly, I see Instagram as my highlight reel for the people I don't see often. I mean, like what you see on Instagram is pretty much kind of it is the highlight reel for me. It's like I've got my kid, I've got Rosie, and I love steak and bourbon.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. So I mean, I think it could be a positive thing. It's good that you can look back and scroll through your personal Instagram and look and be like, this is all the things that I've done. But I think sometimes you can disassociate what's like the highlight reel versus what it should be, where it can be depressing for some people because you're like, oh, it looks like everything's so great on my Instagram, but my real life is very boring, you know?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Like people can generally post like their highlight reel when like and have a false highlight reel of maybe what they perceive what things should be. It's like I think I don't remember what the last thing that I posted was, but it was last weekend. It was a bike ride,
Hmm.
and then a little note that my wife put on one of my rice cakes, and that's probably the first post I've had in a while. I've been busy. Things have been stressful. I mean, like I could post a picture of myself, say my excuse me, my face, and it just looked like this. Um,
This is
it's
23 hours and
like nobody
59
wants to
minutes.
see. Yeah, nobody wants to see this face like for
Right.
like day after day, where it's just so much pressure. So yeah, highlight reel.
Well, then let's talk about
But
what's not on Instagram. So, I think one thing is just kind of like where where things started. I know we did a podcast and then you've done a few podcasts before, but uh, I don't think we got into kind of like where you grew up, kind of like where you started. So like all we see and all I know of you is the New Hampshire Scott operator type person. Did you grow up in New Hampshire?
I've lived in New Hampshire since 1991.
Okay.
My family moved here. We moved here from Severna Park, Maryland, where my dad is Navy, so we've moved around quite a lot. And essentially, I moved up here in 1991. He became the public works officer of the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard,
How old were
and
you in
from
91?
oh man, I was 13, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So I was going into eighth grade. So I started eighth grade here, but I also got held back
Hmm.
in fifth grade. Not because of me being dumb brain which I fully admit to on most occasions. But I lived in Spain for 3 years, and when I came back to the States, the American school system said that I need to have this education that was crucial in that time, like social studies and some other, um, I guess you could call it base building education.
Hmm.
But yeah, they held me back in fifth grade. I
But
didn't know
so
enough.
you held back in, so when you were in Spain, they held you back?
No, coming back from Spain.
Oh, okay.
So essentially, my dad's tour ended over in Spain, and that summer when we were coming back, we met with school officials, and they basically said you should stay behind a year. So all
They
my
didn't.
best friends that I had before I left were all like 1 year ahead of me.
That's crazy. How did you like Spain? What was that? Was it just like resentful the whole time as a young kid, just being like, why am I here? I'm losing touch with all of the only thing that I know, or was it like actually pretty cool and a cool experience?
I think I had started getting used to moving around because I had moved multiple times before then,
Hmm.
and it was definitely a I guess at the time it was I was on the fence. Could have been positive, could have been negative for me at any given time.
Yeah.
There might have been some meltdowns in there,
Yeah.
but for the most part, I look back at it as a positive. I
Absolutely.
had a lot of awesome experiences. Spain is dry and hot. I got super excited the one time it snowed because I was used to it.
Right. Yeah.
But my parents did the right thing by just not going over there and being stationed over there and staying put. They drove us all around Spain. I think my dad bought a Volkswagen camper van, so we toured all over Spain, Europe, everywhere. Drove that thing all over the place, um, and
That's really cool.
got a lot of experience.
I think that's one of
Yeah.
those like when it's happening, you're like, I hate this, get me out of here. But then when you look back, you're like, I got to travel around Spain and like in a camper and like look at all this cool stuff and I know what that's like. And there's people that'll never go to Spain or even experience any of that. So, but I
There's
think in
people that don't even leave their town.
yeah, that's true.
It's just there's people that don't even leave their town, and that amazes me. Let
Yeah, I
alone their
saw
home sometimes, which is
one of my
also
friends
scary.
on Facebook from back home. He posted, he said, "Oh, random fun fact about me. I've never been on an airplane." And he's like 31, I think, 31, 32. So like never been on an
Amazing.
airplane, drove to so I grew up in like Pennsylvania. So from Pennsylvania, I think they went to New Jersey or something and then drove back. Like that's the farthest they've been, like a 5 hour, 5 to 8 hour drive away from their hometown, and that's the furthest they've ever been. It's just crazy.
Wow.
Meanwhile, I'm
Yeah,
like, yo, the hotels in Oman are insane. Yeah, that's crazy. Okay.
it always does seem crazy to me that there's people out there like it seems foreign to me that um, there's people that just have not. I mean, they haven't even left. It's like you start thinking it's like, oh man, you haven't left America. Oh, you haven't left New England. You haven't left the state, let alone some people just have never even left their town. And that's it. Just it seems mind-boggling to me that people just. I mean, like to explore is human nature.
And
We do it as children. We do it as we lose that like exploring gene like as we grow up, depending
yeah,
on like where we grow up.
yeah. What's more amazing to me is that those same people that don't travel like that have very strong opinions on how the world should run or should be. And you're like, you've been to like, let's just say, one or two states in America, and then they're talking about how bad America is or how we should do it like other countries. And it's like, have you been to other countries? Do you know how great America is? Like, obviously, there's faults, but, and there are faults in every country, but it's one of those things where it's like when you go to Africa or the Middle East or even Japan, like there are things that they're just it's very different. And then when you come home, you're like to America, you're like, wow, this is much better. Like just the rules that everybody is okay with, where you're like, wait, I can get caned if I chew gum on the subway. Like if I put a piece of gum in my mouth and chew gum, not spit it out. If I'm just chewing gum, I can be arrested and then hit with a cane multiple times. Yeah,
Is that Singapore?
that is Singapore. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I've been
Yeah,
to
like I was in Singapore for like maybe 8 hours, and I just like I literally sat down with my hands on my lap, and I was just like, I'm
yeah,
like, all right, let's not get into trouble while I'm here.
right. Yeah, I mean it's a beautiful country and it's extremely clean
Yeah,
and it's nice and the people are great and it's pretty diverse, but there are just some rules where it's just like, oh, that feels not safe or not very freedom like. But but yeah,
well,
sorry. So go ahead.
oh no, I was gonna say like it's funny and things are changing too. Um, maybe I mean me personally, I don't think it's for the better. So when I mean, I went to Indonesia or Southeast Asia for 3.5 months. One of my stops when I was in Indonesia was Medan, which at the time, I mean, and I think it still is. It's like the Muslim capital of Southeast Asia.
Hmm.
And I went to Medan. I mean, I went to a fair and I went to like I saw a couple of the sites. There's this beautiful I don't know if it was like state property where it's just like a mosque and it's just giant open courtyard. And I remember walking around and everything was fine. This was 2002. Um, and then I think it was maybe 2 years ago, I just saw some post where somebody was getting beaten in the middle of the square as punishment. And it was like, so a square that used to be like, to me, it was just a very beautiful place. And it was a tourist destination. Now it's just a punishment center. And like, it's like that ebb of like kind of getting a little bit more extreme. You're like, well, as an American, I probably would not be welcome in that place at this point. But no, who knows? I
Yeah,
mean,
sometimes when you enjoy the freedoms of America, you go to other countries and you look like you're insane. You know, it's like it can be crazy. But we're way off track. So fast forward, you moved to New
yeah,
Hampshire.
sorry.
You know, it's all good. You moved
Mm-hmm.
to New Hampshire, and then you finished out high school. Then did you? I don't even know what you got your degree in, or which college you went to, or did you go to college?
I did. So I'm what you call a late bloomer.
Okay.
So my parents thought it was a very important thing for me to just continuously go to school, so they kept on pushing me into what I guess you could call what I was interested in at the time. So I started off graduating high school, not great grades. It was kind of a turbulent time for me where I did not graduate with good grades. The school that I had originally applied to and got accepted to said, "Hey, your grades are shit. Uh, we're not going to accept you anymore." So I actually um, shipped out to Centerville, Virginia, to live there for a year with my sister and her fiance at the time. So lived there for a year, went to college, did not do well down there because I was out of place, not in a good headspace. Ended up going into kitchens and working well in kitchens. So I moved back up here to try again at a college and ended up getting into New England College in Henniker, New Hampshire. where my first year was great. My second year started off great, and I thought that I was ready for a different environment, so I transferred to UNH and knew nobody. It was a giant school. I was completely out of place. I went from classes with 12 people to auditoriums.
Hmm.
So it was just
Culture shock almost.
my
Yeah.
just complete culture shock. Did not. I just got lost in the mix again. So once I finished that semester poorly, um, where I thought that I wanted to do this, that, and the other, I um, essentially did not do good again, but I was really good at cooking. So my parents encouraged me to sign up for something right down the road in Dover, where it was New England College. No, no, it was it's defunct now, but it's the Le Cordon Bleu program at Macintosh College is what it is. So I actually spent an entire year in culinary school. Got an associate's degree and cooked for a while. And that's the degree I hold right now is an associate's degree in culinary
Culinary
arts.
chef Scott. So, what
And I
was the
don't.
bad headspace? Was it just not fitting in? Was it like you feeling a drive to just not fit in with other people, or was it the crowd that you were running with? Like, what do you think? Like looking back.
So it was probably a combination of a lot of things. It was I we moved up in 1991. My dad was stationed in the shipyard for it was supposed to be a 3-year tour. After 2 years, he got offered a CO position, commanding officer position down in Philadelphia. My parents decided it was not a good space or a good place for me, so my mother and I stayed behind. My parents didn't separate; they just lived in different locations. So I stayed back with my mom. We got a house that they still live in to this day. Lived with her for about 2 years. And then my final senior year, I moved out of their house and I moved into the CEO's house on the shipyard, who is a former friend, and they're friends of the family. So I basically moved in with a family and again started to kind of dwindle a little bit, and I wasn't happy. Um, Gained a ton of weight. Like I went from being like a 185, 190 pound athlete to probably pushing. I basically just got fat. Is what happened. Like not in a good like that's where that headspace thing is like I was hanging out with kids that like I probably did some things I probably shouldn't have been doing at the time or ever do. Um, but yeah, it ended up just getting in with a crew that just really didn't have any desire to succeed at anything and had a very negative look at things. Got into a music scene that was like extremely negative. Um, but yeah, it was just it was a kind of a melting pot of stuff that just wasn't good for me.
Was it? Did you play any
Um,
sports? I know jumping around, it's really hard to get back into jump into other teams. You feel like you love, like let's say football. You love football, but if you keep transferring schools, then it's like really hard to identify with that team because you just keep moving. Were there
yeah.
specific
Oh no,
sports that you
I
played?
stayed in the same high school. Yeah, I stayed
Oh,
in the
the whole
same
scholarship.
high school the whole time. That's my parents worked their ass off at making sure that that was kind of like a seamless thing. So stayed with the same high school, but played football, played lacrosse. Um, but yeah, the my mom had always cooked very healthy, cooked very clean. did the best you could for a balanced diet. Whereas the family I started living with, it was like chicken pot pie and Captain Crunch for breakfast, and that's probably where most of my weight gain came from. It was just like being on my own and not knowing anything about food. I'm like, oh yeah, like a tortilla with some refried beans and then a mozzarella stick melted on it. That's dinner. Um, it's like the worst dinner possible.
Were you any good at lacrosse or football?
Uh, I was. Um, I was captain of the football team my senior year. Um, my lacrosse was probably more notable. I've been playing lacrosse for quite some time, but I was on varsity team as a freshman playing lacrosse. Um, Also made it to I think it was state recognized for playing lacrosse. Definitely was on this New Hampshire Vermont Classic where I was just like this all star team. But yeah, it was very evident to my lacrosse coach that like things weren't well.
Yeah,
By the time I had played the middle of the summer Vermont New Hampshire Classic, but
big decline. So
yeah, sports was that.
I was just gonna say, so typical gateway drug. You get out of high school, you get your associate's degree in culinary school, so you start playing with knives, and then you go from knives to guns, right? What led from knives to guns?
So there was so it went from knives to shovels to guns, I guess you could say.
Knives to shovels to guns.
Uh,
A
yeah,
shovel's kind of
knives
like
to
a really
shovels to
big
guns.
knife, right? It's more like a spear, but all right.
Uh, like I'll say my favorite tool in a landscape was always a Maddox, which was you think of a pickaxe has a two pointy ends,
Yeah,
whereas a Maddox is a pointy end and a hoe on the other.
yeah.
So that was always my tool of choice. But yeah, I'd like to. I'm a
How long did
Maddox
you
guy. It's
landscape
kind
for?
of like a battle axe. 8 years.
8 years? Oh,
So
okay.
I played the culinary game. Yeah, I played the culinary game, and it was good. But I got very sick of the alcoholism, the really late nights, horrible pay, and I mean like drugs are very prevalent through culinary things. So decided to change it up, go to landscape construction. So I found a company in Elliott, Maine. Stayed there for 8 years. In the wintertime, I did odd jobs. So I did painting. I helped with plumbing. I did contractor work, like where I just worked in a giant worked on the job site, learned all kinds of stuff, helped everybody out possible. I'd be walking by a room and just watch what they did and how they did it, and picked up everything, learned a lot, and then that eventually led to having the skill set to move into what I do now, which is facilities at 6 Hour Academy.
And is that all that
So yeah,
landscaping? Is that all 20s, 20s to mid 30s?
that was I'd say around 27 to probably mid 30s.
Oh, okay.
Um, it was definitely an odd time. Um, Married, divorced, within that time is I, there's a whole just a laundry list of just randomness through my life till I got to essentially where I am now, where it's just like I've been on an even keel for quite some time since I was about 36 or so.
Do you want to talk about
But yeah, it
your
was.
ex-wife? Where'd you meet her?
I met her at a bar where all great relationships happen.
Was this a relationship bred out of bad mindset crowd and then being like, you like the same, same things that I do. Let's keep, going down this rabbit hole.
Um, I would say I was immediately attracted to her. Like A, she was very attractive, and B, it was kind of this uh, it was chaos. It was addicted to chaos.
Mm.
So that's kind of how my brain is like worked through like my up until my mid 30s, where it was just like I was addicted to chaos. Where like I was, if it was as turbulent as possible, the happier I was. Um, I'm not really sure why my brain works that way. I think it's something to do with like the ADD thing, where I had a marriage counselor tell me at one point, he's like, like you are addicted to how chaotic she makes your life. Like you're addicted to this weird drama thing, which it made complete sense. Where it was, I was always on edge with these things, and it fed into the psychosis. And whereas I should have paid more attention to my own self when I was going through that. But yeah, I met her at a bar and hit things off, and kind of drove a little bit of a bus through my life, but learned more about myself because of that. And that's one of those things where hindsight's 2020. Like you see this bus coming at you, and you don't drive out of the way, but it happens, and you can either sink or swim. So I
Yeah, they
swam.
say the chains of addiction are, what is it? They're too light to notice until they're too strong to break or something like that. There's a saying about that, of like, you don't know that type of stuff is creeping into your life and becoming you until it's almost too late. But I would say most people that know you now they would describe you as somebody that likes a lot of order and routine in their life, or at least working towards that. How often do you feel that old Scott calling your name from a distance, be like, come back to the chaos? Do you feel like that's still a part of your life, or do you think that's just that person's gone?
Uh, 3 beers in.
3 beers in.
That's
Oh, so that's all you get? That's all you got to
three
do to
beers
get
in.
old Scott? So if you want chaos in your
Yeah,
life,
there's
you give Scott a
if
couple
you
IPAs.
if you get me into yeah, if you get me into a certain situation where like I'm out in public and I'm drinking alcohol, yeah, there's a little glimmer of me in there, of the old person, where it's like the uh, basically like the give a care meter just kind of starts going dwindling, 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 and all of a sudden it just bottoms out, and all of a sudden I don't care.
Right.
So there's a reason why I limit myself on alcohol these days.
Yeah.
I don't need that person anymore. That Mr. Jekyll.
Yeah.
All right,
That's
Dr.
good you have
Jekyll,
that
Mr.
under
Hyde.
control.
Mr. Hyde. I don't want to see Mr. Hyde anymore.
Or maybe
It
only
is
use
about
them when you
control.
have to.
Yeah, I mean every once in a while I'll let them out,
Yeah.
but for
Yeah.
the most part, it's a good thing that people see that about me these days, which is order. Because that's, oh, I think it was Socrates said, or no, maybe it was Jocko Willing. I can't remember which one it is, but
Pretty much the same person.
uh, pretty much the same person. What did he say?
Get
Ah,
after
I'm
it.
forgetting the quote right now. No, it was to I'll come back to it. I brain fart on that
All right,
one.
let's go back to you
Um,
facilities at SIG. So playing with guns. Do you teach any courses over there, or have you taught any courses?
no, originally So I came on as a facilities assistant, um, and really just to get my foot in the door. I took a pay cut to go there, but I mean, you start doing like the insurance thing, and you end up like weighing your balances because in landscaping I wasn't insured at all. But uh, took the pay cut and immediately kind of, I mean, I showed my peacock feathers pretty fast. So I moved up very, very quickly. Went from being facilities to range master, where essentially I just controlled order on the ranges, if you will. Um, did take instructor led courses, and I was on the cusp of beginning to start teaching, but my workload shifted a little bit to the point where I was more of a facilities guy and more of like just making sure the ranges were all set. Never really had the time to actually teach classes, even though I'd been teaching CrossFit for I think I think probably like 2 3 years at that point. So I got this teaching bug where I really enjoyed teaching people. And I wanted that to carry over to firearms, where I saw firearms as being really just information. So whether you're teaching somebody how to deadlift or you're teaching somebody how to pull a trigger, it's really just the relay of information and making sure that people understand what you're telling them. So unfortunately, I never got to put that to the test. I mean, I did like during the instructor courses, the last day you do teach. It's called teach backs. So you learn all week, and you get to the last day and you teach people that are just new coming in. A lot of times it's Navy sub guys. We we have a direct line to the naval shipyard where we just call up and say like, hey, we need 20 guys, and they'll send over a bunch of sub guys. It's always funny. You never know what you get when you get sub guys too, which is
I mean, just diversity in
always
the Navy in general. You never know what any 20 guys in anything. I would say, other than like the special ops community, you can pretty much figure out what you're going to get. But most, just any group of 20 people, regardless of the job, you'll get all the diversity you need.
yes. It was diversity is definitely the best way to say the rabble, call the rabble that showed up. And instructors always said like, dude, you should be teaching. But things happen, things change. I got drawn more into the facility side, and people were laid off. It was kind of like a low point. Well, I call it an economic dip, where gun sales were low. We were downsized a little bit. People got laid off. I moved up. It kept me, and again, I kept on taking more responsibility in that realm, as well as trying to balance my workout, my work, my dating life, as well, and just trying to balance everything. The instructor thing, teaching an 8-hour course on a weekend just didn't fit in. So it just never happened. Um, Maybe one day I'll have less of a workload and I will teach classes, but not right now.
And then, so I'm guessing, obviously, landscaping is a pretty active occupation. Did you start facility manager in your SIG career and then realize I need to move more because I'm starting to get fat Scott's starting to come back? And then did you find your introduction to CrossFit and you were like, okay, this is what I need. I just got to punish myself. How did that all start?
Uh, I, I started CrossFit. I think I started CrossFit about 30. My 35th birthday was, I think it was like the last of the Bad Scott made an appearance involving a concussion and a horrible hangover. Um, so, not long after my 35th birthday, which is June, I did go to CrossFit because the girl that I was dating at the time dragged me into a group that was kind of separating from Seacoast Kettlebell. So moved over to them and started doing that and got fairly sober and got that bug. And I think it was a couple years later. A couple years later is when I moved over to SIG. Because the girl I was dating, I broke up with her. Was single when I moved to SIG, but I'd been doing CrossFit for several years. Whittled myself down. So I've always had a body flux. Never always being the same person every 2 years, if you will. But yeah, it was. I guess I fit the mold to get into SIG. But it definitely changed a lot. Still was very physically active on the ranges. It's more so these days that they're pushing me into the office that I have to like watch what I eat and exercise more.
Ugh, the worst.
Horrible. Exercising is for fools.
Yeah, it's a waste of time. It's a pyramid scheme. So, uh, so this is probably about when close to around you met me. I think it was around 2014. That's when I started up doing CrossFit in New Hampshire, and from then until now, Scott has evolved, I think, in his fitness adventures and what he holds true to what fitness is. Can you go a little bit about kind of your findings of going really hard into fitness where we've done competitions together and you've went like all in on trying to do like two a days and things like that, to then going into Thunder Bros, which is basically just like a bodybuilding hypertrophy program, and then all in on cycling, and now I feel like you landed in a place where, or currently kind of doing a little bit of everything, almost more of a truer CrossFit than what you've ever done.
It's I mean, I love where I'm at right now, and I think it's symptomatic of just trying everything. It's like I went to the buffet of fitness, and I just realized I was like, you know what? I like that dish right there. Like that's the dish I like. I'm gonna eat that for a long time.
Hmm.
So that's it's almost as if like the diet and the exercise thing went hand in hand when it was CrossFit, where it was just like I started up and it was like, oh my god, paleo, everybody's paleo, and like I just like hard into the CrossFit, like I you could say the former my former coach Jim Owner definitely blew some smoke, where I was like, cool, somebody like thinks that I could like do this stuff and like I can do really really well on it. So I threw myself into it. Might have ignored a few injuries here and there. Just kept on going. Did the paleo thing. It really kind of started leaning out just a little bit. So yeah, I did the competitive CrossFit for a while. We did that competition. False the chair.
Also
Um,
true.
Still have that picture on my wall.
Nice.
uh, but yeah, I mean, when I met my current wife, Kate, um, we did a lot of competitions together. It was a lot of fun. It's kind of how we like kind of evolved relationship wise, and then kind of changed a little bit of that diet, and all of a sudden we were starting to look into like different things where it was like not so much performance based, but a little bit more aesthetic based, a little bit of hey, I want some bigger shoulder. I'm like, hey, I want my ass to look good.
Nothing wrong
Um,
with that.
so yeah, that's kind of how things started shifting, and it's like the education, diet, and fitness thing all started kind of playing around. Where it's just like as I grew as a coach, and I grew understanding diet a lot better. Um, and then I grew understanding like the fitness realm better. Is just like my interest kind of shift shape shifted to like,
Relax.
okay, I want to get out of paleo. I want to get I want to get a little leaner. So like I'm gonna change things up a little bit, and I'm gonna go after this diet or that diet. So yeah, it's all like this weird swirling thing that's just like it keeps on popping up. But yeah, I ended the competitive thing. Um, Except, actually, no, I would say the last big competition I did was when I turned 40 because I just wanted to prove something to myself. So, really pushed hard, uh, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, eating like a champ, where there was no set prescribed diet, and did the competition. And then after that, I started getting into a little bit more of like the I want to tone things back. I don't want to breathe hard every single workout. My wife and I started uh, lifting a little bit more, changed how we did things, not have to be a fire breather anymore. It was kind of nice. We did our own programming, and then we found Thunder Bros, which is just piqued my interest just because of the name.
Right.
And it was $25. So thank you, Dave Lipson.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun, and my wife joined me, and we became. I mean, it's cliche, but stronger and stronger together.
Yeah. I mean, I
So
think from
not
an
only did both of
outsider,
us get stronger,
looking in, I think
but
you were really burning out on CrossFit. Like you would just come in and just kind of almost be like a grumpy Scott, where you just like be deadlifting and then you'd be like rubbing your elbow and back and forth. And I think what you did was really smart. I think instead of just being like, you know what, I'm done, and just completely moving away from the space of CrossFit or any type of fitness, you were like, you know what, I'm just going to slow everything down and just get into lifting. And I think that was the first time that after you were dipping for a while that I would see you in the gym, and you were just really enjoying yourself. You had your 8 sets of 8 with an 8 second negative and, sets on sets on sets, and it was working, and you were getting much better. And I think that was really important.
yeah, I have Post Malone to thank for having awesome Sunday mornings. It was always Post Malone and Thunder Bros.
Yep.
Just random, totally random. Um, but yeah, did the Thunder Bro thing for a bit, and I cycling came about because I I couldn't run anymore. Um, I was also carrying a lot of mass. So after doing Thunder Bros for a while and really just focusing on heavy lifts, not doing a lot of quick metabolic conditioning, running sucks.
Yeah.
It's just the knees just like man, what are you doing to me? So I did have knee surgery. I did tear my meniscus at some point. I don't really know if it was from CrossFit or if it maybe was trying to belly surf a rolling cart in the indoor rifle range of the 6 Hour Academy. I tried I tried doing like a whatever a belly surf on a cart and ended very poorly. Smashed my knee off the ground, walked it off. I'm like, I'm fine, fine.
Were you alone,
But
or what prompted that?
I was alone and there were no cameras. I just wanted to do it.
Okay. There it is.
So there you
Letting
go.
chaos
The
Scott
truth
play
is
for a
out
second.
of why my knee had to have surgery is because I wanted to belly surf a cart.
Into anything, or is this just across like a warehouse? Like what was happening?
So I went handle first, and the way that those things are made is that like the handles stick out over the wheels more. Whereas if I went on the other direction, I probably would have grabbed the handles and it would have been more balanced. But what it was is I was on it, and then it flipped up, and just I ate it hard. Walked it off, thought everything was fine, kept going, and then all of a sudden there's just my knee just started not liking me very much. And that's what, yeah, got me into surgery, and still was cranky after Thunder Bros. So I decided to start riding my bike more. I already had a cyclocross bike, threw some road tires on there. I'd ridden my bike before, back when I landscaped. I thought that my 10-mile ride to work was a good haul. Um, Riding to work, riding home. But I always enjoyed it. I was always push. I was like pushing myself as hard as I can, and came back around to the bike and decided to hop on it and realized that I still really liked it. Grew as a cyclist, if you will. More and more, started doing more miles. Thinking that like, oh man, like 25 miles, it's so far. Um, to getting a new bike and spending a lot more money, and just, I mean, I'm standing over the cycling well, just doing this like all
How
the
many
time,
miles would you
dumping
say you
more.
average a week?
Um, Depends. If I'm in a heavy training week, it's probably going to be like about 100 miles. If I'm doing light training, so I still do indoor training, because um, it's basically it's programming is what it is. It's structured training. Out on the road, it's hard to get structured training. There's ways that you can do that now, but I still do structured rides indoors, and then I'll do outside rides now. But this is a new year, where I did structured training all winter, and I'm moving into the outside, but I'm also going to start doing structured outside rides. So I probably will start pushing an average of like 120 a week, I hope,
Nice.
if all goes well.
So you go from knives to guns to CrossFit, landscaping and all that stuff, and then you're riding your bicycle. You have a new wife, and now you're masturbating in hospitals. Why? Why was everyone okay with that? We had to bring it back to that.
So
What's going on with that?
it's funny. My wife, she's like, hey, I just got a memory on my phone. 2 years ago, we're driving down to the egg retrieval. I was like, oh, that's the room day. She's
The
like,
room
yep,
day.
that's the room day. So,
Would you say that's one of the
uh,
most awkward feelings you've ever had in your life?
yes. Uh,
Is it a separate appointment
it,
for that? Like, do you solely go there to give your donation?
well, there's two donations. The first one is I got to check everything out. So there's just equally awkward situations where you have like the first donation, which is basically like you're at home, you do your thing. It's still a lot of pressure, but you gotta do it. They give you a cup. They give you a way to kind of like write the label, the time, and all that stuff, and you have a half an hour to get it to a lab. The lab happens to be in Exeter. I live half an hour away from Exeter. So
So you
what's
did it in your
funny
truck.
is that like was
So
that
you did it in your
not
truck.
literally a sprint finish and then a sprint out the door. Like I was like, okay, my bags are ready, all the stuff is good. Let's go time.
Nice.
No
Hold on. So
pressure.
what was the process you obviously we're talking about well maybe not obviously, but we're talking about
Wait, what is the process? That's a
you
little
having a
personal.
kid. What no, what's the name? The name of this whole thing was I forget what it's called that you and Kate went through to have your child.
um, so, man, I'm drawing a blank myself. It's almost as if I erased it from my memory. Uh, so
Was it was fertility
essentially,
treatments, right? For Kate.
yes, it was fertility treatment, and what it was is that we were being very particular. We didn't want to go through there's two forms of IVF, in vitro fertilization, um, or I think they're both called IVF, but essentially there's one where they give you a bunch of hormones, and then you have your go time, and anything could happen. Like where like they're just ramping up the female's hormones, and you could get twins, you could get triplets, you could get quadruplets because the hormones are so high in the female. And then the other one, which is a little bit more expensive, is it's almost a so you essentially do an egg retrieval, and then you do a sperm retrieval, and they marry those things in a dish, and then put it back in. And that's where everything led to. Was like they had to make sure that I was functioning properly. They had to make sure my wife was functioning properly. That's where the whole like in the house cup sprint out the door. I will bring up the hilarious fact that I asked my wife to get me a brown paper bag to put the cup in, um, so that I could deliver not in the open. And she brings me back a donut bag from Hannaford, which is like wax lined. So I put it in this bag, crumpled it up, and they're like, "You gotta keep it warm. It's the middle of winter." I'm like, "Stick it on my armpit." So half an hour, I kept that under my armpit.
Very nice.
Contacted her, and I'm like so careful about all this stuff. Now I'm like trying to be discreet and be like, "Yeah, I got the brown paper bag, man. I got the brown paper bag." This chick, the paper bag is a wax paper bag, so it got hot and it just started kind of disintegrating under my armpit. So it's like this like half ripped paper bag that I'm handing over to this lady, and she just pulls it out in the open with two people standing behind me. And she's like, "Oh, you got to label it this way," and just hands it back to me out in the open. I'm like, "Yeah, like okay, like well, this is what we're doing." So how to label it, give it back to her. That was the first round. The second round was down. We had to drive down to Boston, and this is like the real deal event where they're doing an egg retrieval for my wife. So we retell the story in a very simple fashion of if Ari ever, my daughter's name is Ari, if Ari ever asked me like, "Hey, where do I come from?" Literally just gonna say, "Well, your mom got taken into one room and then knocked out. I went into a mop closet, produced babies." that's that's essentially
Oh, she's totally going to be cool with that
what went
explanation.
on.
She's going to be like, "Oh, okay, that
Oh
makes
yeah,
sense."
yeah, yeah. But that's the last thing I want to do is be like, "You were technically conceived in a petri dish." But no, the process is you go into a room, uh, hilarious, and again, I'll say again that the hindsight's 2020. Um, where we're sitting in this room, we're kind of like slightly uncomfortable, but in uncomfortable situations like that, Kate and I have a tendency to just joke around about everything.
Yeah.
So we're keeping it light. And I see this guy walk in by himself with a backpack, just with his head down and his eyes averted, and hindsight's 2020. I should have been like that. So it's I should have been like, that's what I'm going to look like in about 5 to 10 minutes.
And don't give that guy a high
Um,
five.
don't give that guy a high five. Uh, so yeah, like I was totally unprepared for the whole situation where they come and grab Kate. She disappears. She goes into to the other room, and a nice nurse with fully masked up. This is before COVID, so like just all I saw was this. She takes me to this room just outside the door that we were in a busy hallway, directly into this room. It's super low lit. There's a toilet. There's a recliner. There's a TV up on the wall, and there's a sink. And she comes in, she grabs some sheets, puts them on the recliner. There's like a few stains on the sheet, which is like unnerving. She's like, "Do you want me to get you another ones?" I'm like, "Don't worry, I'm not gonna sit."
This is for time.
So she's like, "Okay, here's your cup. Here's this. What you want to do is produce in the cup, and then you're gonna take this and you're gonna drop it off in this place." So I'm like, "Okay," and leaves the room. I lock the door, completely alone in this weird room. I can hear everything outside, people going in and out, conversations, and I'm there to do a job. That
And you
I'm
know that
not
they
too happy.
know what you're doing in that room.
Yeah, I mean, like they might as well put on the door masturbatorium. So I think I stood there for a good 2 minutes, fully clothed, looking around the room, just being like, all right, I'm not touching those remotes. I'm sure that they would give me some incentive, but like, you know what? I'm good with not touching those things. I'm gonna touch as few things in this room as possible.
Yeah.
To quote Star Lord, if you probably put a neon or a blacklight light on in that room, it would look like a Jackson Pollock painting.
Yikes.
So,
All right. So moving on. 9.5 months later after that, you have a beautiful daughter. What's that like? I'm sure it was all worth it.
amazing! It's the greatest thing ever. It literally is like one of the greatest things ever, and I can't believe I waited this long. Actually, I'm glad I waited this long because I'm in the right place. I'm in the right place mentally, physically, emotionally. I'm glad I didn't have a kid with my ex-wife or anybody previous. It's it's this great time that I'm like I get to watch this little me run around and I can see her isms developing and recognizing like I know where she got that from.
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's probably one of the greatest joys. I mean, you probably under this pelt of awesomeness. I have a butt chin, and when she came out and I held her, and I'm like, she has a butt chin too. Of course, at the time, I had a massive beard when she was born, and the nurses were just looking at me. And I was like, she has a butt chin. They're like, and
And you're like,
I'm like, no, I have one too. Yeah, exactly. Like I have one too.
this is my
Um,
kid. You use the right cup.
yes, exactly. We use the right cup.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. People say like these things like, oh, once you have a kid, your life is over, or you don't know what your life was like before you had a kid. Like, no, I don't remember what life was like without her because I just like she's something that I look forward to every single day. Um,
Yeah, it's
and
totally
like it
different.
definitely life is definitely not over.
Yeah, it's
Life
it's
is
just
just beginning.
beginning. Yes. Yeah. And I think both of us are very early in our parenting, but you can just tell it's some decisions become so easy, other decisions become tough, and just like the things that you put on your kid or what you expect your kid to be, and then at the end of the day, you're just like, I just want a healthy, happy kid. Like I think before I had Lucas, uh, or before we had Lucas, um, I was like, oh, I hope he does this or does that, and then you're just like, I just want to like show this kid as much as I can of the world, and then just let him, decide what he wants to do. I feel like if I had somebody in my life where you think about being a kid raising and people telling you what you need to do or what you should do, and you just end up, most people end up just like raging against it. And you're like, so a lot of people ask me, like, oh, is Lucas going to be like a weightlifter? Or do you think he's going to be really fast? And I'm like, knowing my luck or what's going to happen, he's going to be a painter or he's going to play the trumpet, something that I have no ability to help him with other than just providing the funds to pay a music teacher way more money than I would ever want to teach him to be, a musician.
Yeah. I honestly don't want Ari to be anything like me. There's definitely some things I want her and I want to impart on her, which is, I guess you could say, things that I've um, learned within the last 5 years or so of how I've kind of developed a little bit more of of who I really am inside, where I'm kind of like growing I'm growing who it sounds funny because I'm growing who I really am as opposed to who I think I should be, which is a huge difference. But I'm starting to realize that parenting is about restraint, and restraining yourself from like it's like I was actually talking to somebody in the gym today where I was it's like I'm having this epiphany that like it's like half of parenting is about restraint, where she's taking the little plastic donut things and trying to put it on the dowel, and she's not quite getting it. Doesn't have her hand right on it, and she's just kind of like, and you just want to be like, oh, let me help you with that. Let me show you how to do that. Let me just drive your hands to put that donut on the dowel, and they have to figure it out themselves, and you have to restrain yourself from always wanting to help them. And I've become very comfortable with just sitting in the living room with her and letting her just do her thing. She wants to come over to me and hang out and hug and whatever. I'm all about that. But I love just watching her trying to figure things out, and
Yeah.
it's so cool to watch it. Like, watch, and I mean, she's like playing with something. I literally sit there and watch her face the whole time because I'm watching the gear works go, and it's a very cool thing. It makes me slow down a lot.
Yeah, I think so.
Um,
I've gotten out of all of the parenting advice that people throw into you, I think two things really stuck, and I think they apply really well. They said the first one's kind of like a metaphor, and it's that hockey is only as awesome as it is because of the rink around it. The boards make hockey exciting. If you ever play hockey on a lake, a huge lake, you have to be very careful with the puck. It slows the game way down because if you pass too hard or shoot too hard, the puck can go way too far. So basically, that's just a metaphor for you need to give your child really strong boundaries that keep them safe, and then let them play within that. And then to combo that, the secondary advice is don't take experiences from your child, even from a very young age, of like what you were explaining of like her trying to figure that out. You could just give her the answer and then she would know, or I could help Lucas down from the steps, or things like, obviously if they're at the top of something that's unsafe, you use common sense. But if another kid comes over and pushes Lucas down, or he bumps his head on the table and he tries to do it again, he bumps his, like, those are all experiences, whether they're bad and good. Let them experience them, and then if they have questions, they'll come to you and talk to you about them. It's like you gotta,
yeah.
within
I
reason, we
mean,
have to use
how
common
does a
sense.
child understand? Yeah, how does a child understand what hot is until they experience what something hot is? You can't just sit there and say like that's hot, and
Then they never
they're
touch it.
labeling that, okay, that's hot. but well, I mean, they need to experience what something hot is. I mean, and it's gonna happen. I mean, you can't wrap your kid in a bubble wrap.
Right. So I
Um,
let Lucas experience things that are hot. My wife tried to give me a bunch of shit because so we have a ceiling fan and he kept pointing at the ceiling fan. So I lifted him up really high and he starts reaching his hand to touch the blades. And typically you'd be like, no, 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 don't touch that. That's really bad. And so I was right there and I guided his hand and it was on a low speed. You know what I mean? It's just a small wooden fan just
yeah,
rotating on the low speed. And I was like, be careful. And he just lightly touched it and it just went like the do, 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 do. And then he put his hand down and I was like, wow. And he just like, and then he did it again. And now when he goes close to fans or things, he's kind of like, cautious, you know what I mean? Instead of being like, I was told to never touch this. Like, so it's like things like that. You know, you let your kid experience things in a very controlled or seemingly controlled situation, and then they quickly realize, like, you know, you let them touch something that is hot enough that it's uncomfortable, but it doesn't burn them. You know, you don't let the like, oh, you want to touch the stove? Go ahead, it's on high. Like, just let them touch something that's like a hot coffee mug and be like, that's hot. And it's a kind of a way to just, you know, build the trust and not take experiences from them.
yeah, yeah. It's so enjoyable to watch them experience new things.
Yeah. So what's new in Scott's life? Just to kind of wrap it up. What kind of what do you got going on now?
Um, I think going back to kind of what I was saying, where I'm like in this process of really trying to uh, grow as a person, grow more of me, as opposed to who I think I should be or be in a place where I should think I should be in. I'm getting trying to get happy with just where I'm at, where it's like I'm balancing like this cycling thing and CrossFit and lifting weights. So I have this like this marriage of of all three of those things and dialing in diet kind of stuff and feeling really good about myself. Looking to get into more education so I can grow at work. And then personally, I'm actually taking a break with things and reading books again and just kind of, I guess, growth. Uh, you can never stop learning is what I'm basically saying. It's like I'm constantly learning.
And how old are you now?
It's great. I will be 44 in less than a month.
So you're 44 in
So,
your growth phase.
yeah, yeah.
That's good.
44th, and I'm starting to come into my own,
That's good
which I'm
news.
okay. But you know
Starting to
what?
figure out who you are.
No gray hairs. No gray hairs.
I have I actually we found so for the longest time I had like one or two gray hairs right here and one gray hair in my beard, and now they're coming in. I got some over here, coming over here. I got like two nice little ones there. So I mean, hey, I'd rather go gray than gone, but you know, it's
This
it's
is true.
crazy. Yeah.
There's always just for men. Yeah, it's a lot easier to use than to get plugs.
Yeah, or wigs, you know. Oh, I just rock a sick wig.
Or like,
Oh. All right, man. Well, thanks for your time. I think this is great conversation, just kind of catching up on like, you know, where you are in your life and how you got there, and I think people will really appreciate this. Do you have anything else?
yeah, when I'm allowed alcohol again, we'll have to get a beer, and we'll hear about you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, we should drink. They want Chaos Scott to come out like a round two, but it's Chaos Scott. We have we get to we get to see
It's funny.
behind.
I'm watching the show. Have you seen Brooklyn Nine Nine?
Yes.
There's like the chick that like they're like constantly trying to push more alcohol into her to see like what phase she goes through like after like He's like, what's number 6 alcohol drink look like on you? And it's like, you don't want to see that.
All right, so I'm just going to
Cool.
stop
Well, I had a good
recording
time.
and then we'll be able to, well, let's talk offline here in a second. Let me just hit stop.